Hi, I'm Sarah. Nice to meet you. Before I tell you my story, kindly tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I like to know where you're from. Now let's dive in. I used to think I was doing everything right. I had a stable career as a nurse practitioner, a small but cozy townhouse, and a car I loved driving to work. On the outside, I looked like the picture of stability. But every time I opened my banking app or saw my mailbox stuffed with bills, a knot twisted in my stomach. It wasn't just one kind of debt. It was all of them. Student loans from grad school, the car payment I thought I deserved, after years of driving a beat-up sedan, credit card balances that ballooned from a few too many emergencies. And if I'm being honest, a few too many "I deserve this" purchases, and even tax debt from a year I didn't plan properly for freelance work. Add to that the mortgage on my townhouse, and my total debt sat at $237,000. That number felt like a life sentence. I'd run the numbers over and over, thinking if I just make the minimum payments I'll be free in 20 years. 20 years of working just to catch up. 20 years of interest eating away at my hard-earned money. The real breaking point came one Thursday night. I was sitting at my kitchen table, bills spread out like a deck of cards, when my mom called. She asked if I could help her cover a small medical expense, something she shouldn't have had to worry about after raising me alone and working herself to the bone for decades. I had to tell her I couldn't, not because I didn't want to, but because I literally didn't have the money. When I hung up, I just sat there in silence. It wasn't just guilt. It was this deep, heavy realization that my life wasn't really mine. I was working, but for what? To hand my paycheck to banks, lenders, and the IRS? I remember thinking, enough. I'm done living like this. I didn't know exactly how I'd do it, but I knew one thing. If I was going to claw my way out of $237,000 in debt, I had to go all in. Not halfway. Not when I can. I mean a full-on, relentless, no-excuses approach. I started by running the numbers, really running them. How much could I make if I pushed myself harder than I ever had before? What if I picked up more shifts? What if I took on extra work outside the hospital? The figures were staggering. If I could consistently bring in a certain amount, I could kill this debt in a few years instead of decades. But there was a catch. It would mean working 80 to 90 hours a week. It would mean no vacations, no dinners out, no lazy weekends. My social life would take a nosedive. I'd be exhausted. I'd miss events, birthdays, maybe even relationships. I stared at that reality, and surprisingly, I didn't flinch. Maybe it was because I'd grown up watching my mom juggle 2 jobs while raising me. Maybe it was because I'd already tasted the suffocating weight of financial chains and decided I'd rather crawl through fire than live like this another decade. So I made a decision. For the next few years my life would be one thing: work. Work with purpose. Work with a finish line. The next morning I put in for extra shifts at the hospital, applied for a second full-time position at a smaller clinic, and even reached out to a telehealth service about part-time hours. I didn't know it then, but that was the start of a 31-month marathon that would push me to my limits and change me forever. As I locked my front door that morning, coffee in hand, I whispered to myself, this is the last time I'll live like this. The first week of my new schedule felt like I'd been shot out of a cannon. My mornings started before the sun came up. Alarm at 4:45, out the door by 5:15, coffee thermos in hand. My primary hospital shift ran from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., but instead of going home afterward, I'd drive across town to a smaller clinic for my second full-time job, working there until 10 p.m. On the days I wasn't at the clinic, I logged into a telehealth platform from my couch, headset on, treating patients until midnight. That was my life 7 days a week. At first, it was almost exciting. Watching my checking account swell with overtime pay was intoxicating. For the first time in years, I wasn't avoiding my banking app. I was opening it daily, almost giddy. I threw thousands at my debt right out of the gate. In the first month alone, I paid off more than I had in the previous year combined. But by the second month, the adrenaline started to wear off. My laundry piled up. I missed 2 of my best friend's texts, and by the time I saw them, she'd already stopped asking if I was free. My fridge was a graveyard of takeout containers and half-empty energy drink cans. Sleep became something I chased, not something I got. One night, after a brutal 14-hour stretch at the hospital, I sat in my car and stared at the steering wheel for a solid 10 minutes, too drained to even start the engine. My body ached, my eyes burned, and for a moment, I wondered if I was slowly destroying myself. But then I thought about the $3,800 I'd just sent to my student loan servicer that morning. The balance had dropped enough to make me smile, and that feeling was like fuel. I started tracking my progress like it was a game. Each payment was another boss battle defeated. The day my car loan dipped under $10,000, I celebrated with, well, nothing. I couldn't justify spending money on a celebration when every extra dollar could attack the next debt. That became my mantra: delayed gratification. The outside world kept going without me. My friends went to concerts, weddings, and weekend getaways I only saw on Instagram. My mom called every Sunday, her voice tinged with concern. "Are you taking care of yourself, honey?" she'd ask. I'd always say yes, even if I was lying. The truth was, my body was tired, my mind was foggy, and my calendar was a blur of shifts. But every time doubt crept in, I pictured the finish line. No payments, no creditors, no debt hanging over my head. By month 5, something surprising happened. My endurance kicked in. The exhaustion became a background noise I could almost tune out. I was operating in a kind of mechanical rhythm, and my progress was undeniable. I'd already wiped out one credit card, my car loan was almost gone, and my tax debt had been cut in half. Still, I knew this pace couldn't last forever. The cracks were there, subtle but widening. I was starting to lose track of days. My emotions ran hot and cold, and small annoyances could set me off. One night, after finishing a late telehealth shift, I checked my bank balance and realized something. If I kept this exact pace, I'd be completely debt-free in less than 3 years. It was both exhilarating and terrifying. Because deep down I knew I was betting my health, my relationships, and my sanity against a clock. And if anything went wrong, the whole plan could collapse. But I wasn't about to stop now. By month 9, I was starting to see numbers I'd only dreamed of before. My student loans, once the Everest of my debt, had been hacked down by nearly half. My car loan was gone, paid off in a single satisfying lump sum that made me want to frame the receipt. The tax debt cleared. Every time I sent in another massive payment, I'd open the loan servicer's website and just stare at the updated balance, my heart pounding. It was like watching chains snap one by one. But while the numbers were going down, something else was breaking. Me. It started with little things. A pounding headache that wouldn't go away. Dropping my keys 3 times in one morning because my hands wouldn't stop shaking. My appetite disappeared, replaced with an endless craving for caffeine and sugar. One evening in late fall, I was working a telehealth shift when a patient asked me a simple question. Something I'd answered 100 times before. My mind went completely blank. For a solid 5 seconds, I just sat there silent, staring at my computer screen like I'd forgotten how words worked. When I finally stumbled through the answer, I muted my mic and took a shaky breath. I realized I wasn't just tired, I was burning out. The next day, my mom stopped by unexpectedly. She brought soup like she used to when I was sick as a kid. I wanted to tell her I was fine, that I had it under control, but as soon as she hugged me, I broke. Tears I didn't even know I'd been holding back poured out. She sat me down at the kitchen table and said, "Sandra, you can't pour from an empty cup. You've got to take care of yourself first." I shook my head. "If I slow down now, Mom, I'll lose momentum. I'm so close." She looked at me with that mix of pride and worry only a mother can pull off. Close is not the same as there. And there's no point getting debt-free if you're too sick to enjoy it. Her words sat with me for days. I didn't quit, I couldn't, but I started making small adjustments. I carved out one night a week where I didn't work, even if it meant losing a few $100s. I started meal prepping on Sundays so I wasn't living on granola bars and gas station coffee. I even went for a walk every morning before my first shift, just to breathe air that wasn't recycled through a hospital HVAC system. It wasn't much, but it kept me from completely unraveling. By month 12, I crossed a huge milestone. Under $100,000 left. Seeing that 6-digit number drop to 5 was like crossing into a new world. I took a picture of the screen and set it as my phone wallpaper. Every time I felt drained or questioned why I was doing this, I looked at it. But milestones don't erase the grind. There were still nights when I got home so exhausted I sat on my couch in scrubs for an hour without moving. There were mornings when my body ached so much, I wondered if I could really do another 2 years of this. The truth was, the finish line was closer, but it still felt far enough away to hurt. And in the back of my mind, I couldn't shake the fear that one unexpected emergency could blow the whole thing apart. I was about to find out just how quickly that could happen. It happened in February, right when I felt like I'd finally found my rhythm again. I was working the evening shift at the clinic when I felt a sharp pain shoot up my lower back. It was so sudden I nearly dropped the patient chart I was holding. I brushed it off. Nurses and nurse practitioners live with aches all the time. But by the next morning the pain was worse, radiating down my right leg until I could barely bend over to put on my shoes. A visit to the doctor confirmed it. A herniated disc. You need to slow down, he said. If you keep pushing like this you could do permanent damage. Slow down? That wasn't an option. I had less than $80,000 to go, and the thought of stretching my plan out by months, or years, made my stomach turn. But my body didn't care about my plan. The pain forced me to take 3 full days off work, and in my world 3 days off was like tossing hundreds of dollars straight out the window. I lay on my couch, staring at the ceiling, my phone buzzing with shift notifications I couldn't accept. For the first time the fear I'd been carrying quietly in the background roared to the front. What if I can't finish this? By the 4th day I forced myself back to work, moving slower, gritting my teeth through the pain. I started wearing a back brace under my scrubs and using every break to stretch. The overtime hours weren't quite as long, but I made up for it by cranking out more telehealth sessions at home, often sitting with a heating pad pressed to my spine. That month my payments weren't as big and I hated it. It felt like the finish line had inched away from me. But something shifted in my mindset. Up until then I'd been laser-focused on speed, finishing as fast as humanly possible. Now I realized I had to balance speed with survival. This wasn't just about getting to zero, it was about getting there in one piece. I started managing my work more strategically. Instead of grabbing every single extra shift, I picked the ones that paid the highest rates. I stopped buying cheap, quick food and invested in meals that actually fueled me even if they cost a little more. And I carved out 2 full rest days a month, non-negotiable. The changes worked. By late spring, the herniated disc was healing, and my payments were back in the 5-figure range. I smashed through the $50,000 mark and the momentum came roaring back. But now, every payment carried a different kind of weight. Before I'd been chasing the number. Now I was chasing the version of myself who would walk away from this journey. Debt-free, yes, but also stronger, healthier, and still standing. Still, I'd be lying if I said I didn't think about quitting sometimes. On the hardest days when my back ached and my eyelids felt like bricks, I wondered if I was asking too much of myself. But then I'd think about the life waiting on the other side. No more interest payments, no more juggling bills, no more saying I can't when my mom needed me. By month 28 I could smell the finish line. Less than $20,000 stood between me and total freedom. It was so close I could almost taste it. What I didn't know then was that the final stretch would be the hardest, not because of my body but because of the question I'd never let myself ask until that point. What happens when it's over? The last $20,000 felt different. It wasn't just about the number anymore. It was about everything it represented. Every early morning, every missed party, every night I worked with my back screaming in protest. It all funneled into those final months. I went back into overdrive, but this time it was a controlled sprint. I chose my shifts like a chess player planning moves in advance. Highest pay rates. Minimal downtime. I worked through holidays, skipped every distraction and funneled every extra cent toward that balance. By month 30 I was down to $5,000. I could see the end, but instead of feeling purely excited I felt unsettled. For nearly 3 years my life had revolved around debt. It was my morning motivation, my daily goal, my reason for pushing myself past exhaustion. Without it, who was I going to be? So I didn't slow down. On the morning of the final payment, I brewed a cup of coffee and sat at my kitchen table, just like the night years ago when I'd first decided to do this. Only this time the table wasn't covered in bills and overdue notices. Just my laptop, my bank account, and the loan servicer's website open on the screen. I typed in the amount. My hands shook as I hit submit. The confirmation screen popped up. Your balance is $0. I just stared at it. No cheers, no tears, just stunned silence. Then slowly this deep, quiet sense of relief washed over me. Not the kind you get when something good happens. The kind you get when a weight you've carried for so long suddenly isn't there anymore. Later that day I called my mom. It's done, I said. There was a pause. Then her voice cracked. Sandra, you did it. That night I didn't go out to celebrate. I didn't buy anything extravagant. I sat on my couch, lights low, and let the reality sink in. I was free. But freedom didn't feel like I'd imagined. I thought I'd feel unstoppable, euphoric. Instead I felt calm, and a little lost. I realized how much of my identity had been tied to this mission. For 31 months, every decision I made was filtered through the question, will this help me get debt-free? Now that question was gone. The next few weeks were strange. I slept in. I caught up with friends. I bought my mom a plane ticket to visit me. And slowly I started asking a new question. What's next? I didn't want to slip back into old habits, so I set a new goal. Not as intense as the last one, but just as intentional. I began building an emergency fund, then investing. I wanted my money to work for me now instead of the other way around. Looking back, I know this pace isn't for everyone. Working 80 to 90 hours a week isn't sustainable forever. But for me, for that season of my life, it was worth it. I traded nearly 3 years for a lifetime without debt. And if I learned anything, it's this. Freedom isn't a lottery win. It's built one exhausting, determined, disciplined step at a time. And once you taste it, you'll never want to go back. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed my story, don't forget to like and hit subscribe. You will also enjoy other stories on AJ Family Drama. Until next time, bye.